Hey everybody, thanks for listening to this episode of the Aquademia podcast. I'm Sean O'Laughlin.
I'm Justin Grant.
And I am Maddie Cassidy.
And this is a really cool episode. Not as cool as it could be because Maddie wasn't there with us. But Justin and I got a chance to take a day trip to Philadelphia, which doesn't sound like a big deal until you realize that we're in New Hampshire. So we went down to Philly for like a few hours and then flew back so we could record a couple episodes with the folks over at Samuels & Son Seafood. And that is a distributor out of Philadelphia, that huge distributor. I've never been to a processing plant that has so many different species at it. It was really cool.
That was my first time taking a tour like that, and so I have nothing to compare it to, but it was
very
cool. Yeah, it was very cool, very, very large, and they definitely know what they're doing over there, and it's crazy to see how they organize and have all these fish moving in, moving out, reprocessing. Yeah. It's crazy.
And they knew exactly where everything was. I mean, when you walk in here, it looks like just a big warehouse with shelves and just full of boxes of fish, and it just like willy-nilly. They knew where every single thing was. They were like, oh, this box is full of this species from this country, and this just, it was amazing. It was amazing to see, and it was really, really cool. We got to put on, the hair nets and the beard nets and the lab coats and walk through. It was pretty legit. Pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, the pictures are iconic.
So
that's because I'm not a man of large stature, and they had extra large everything. Oh. I was very warm though.
Yeah. So this was a really unique opportunity that we had because Bill Bradford from Samuels & Son, they started a podcast as well, a seafood podcast, and their podcast is called MONGER. And it's fantastic. It's a great show. They got 3 episodes out now. If you have not listened to it, if you're just hearing about it now, go back in your search tab on your podcast player and search for Monger and make sure you subscribe to their show. Bill does a great job. They got some really cool guests. A couple of their first episodes were at the Boston Seafood Show. We thought we were making history at the Boston Seafood Show, but it was
funny.
It was a big day for podcasting at the Boston Seafood Show, I guess.
That's awesome.
So, they have a couple nice long episodes from there, and they interviewed a whole bunch of people. So it's a great show. It's going to continue to be a great show, and we're going to be on it. So hopefully that'll add to it, maybe. But we had a really good conversation with them, and we also had an opportunity to get them on our show, and that's what this episode is. We're sitting down talking about what they do, where they came from, and really how a distributor fits into kind of the supply chain and just how fish gets to your plate and where they fit in. So it was cool. I hope you enjoy the show. Justin, we had a great time.
Yeah, we did have a good time. It was a great opportunity to be able to, we got up a little early, but we hopped on a quick, 1-hour flight down to Philadelphia, and Samuels & Son was located really close to the airport, so we didn't have to travel too far once we landed, and we really were able to maximize our day there, and it was well worth the journey.
Yeah, and we got some delicious food. We went to a restaurant and had some of their mussels. We went to a restaurant that they actually supply the seafood for.
Yep.
And we had some mussels and a delicious burger that was just had a mountain of lobster meat on top of it, and it was delicious.
Oh my gosh!
So,
wow.
Yeah, so
that's amazing.
It was a good day.
Sure was.
Yeah. So I hope everyone enjoys the episode. Remember, Monger. Search for the Monger podcast to learn some more about seafood and just expand your knowledge. And with that,
enjoy the interview.
Let's talk about seafood.
Welcome to the Aquademia podcast.
Our diet is hurting the environment in myriad ways. We desperately need to eat more seafood.
This is a pioneering industry with a whole lot of people who have really good ideas and a lot of experience and are unafraid.
Aquademia is your go-to podcast for a fresh take on all things seafood.
So we're sitting down with Joe Laspragata and Bill Bradford from Samuel & Son Seafood out of Philadelphia here. How's it going, guys?
Very well.
Good morning. How are you?
Thanks for having us over here. And we took a flight this morning. We're flying out this afternoon. It's going to be whirlwind of a day.
I told you guys you could come in Thursday night, and then we could have gone out to an account here and gotten dinner.
Yeah, that would have been nice, but I think it's a little...
Yeah, the problem with having 2 young kids at home, right?
Yeah, that and costs and prices and everything.
Trying to get me in trouble with the wife.
Yeah.
Don't blame me.
Thanks
you
for
can do that on your own.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, you got that right.
So we're super excited to be here because Samuels & Sons have started a podcast as well, and we are brothers in seafood podcast right now.
Pioneers.
That's right. They started their show right around the same time we did. I think you started recording at the seafood show?
We started recording, our producer Joe and I started recording in the middle of our booth the second we got to Boston, day one, and we brought in everybody pretty much that visited our booth got on the podcast.
Yeah,
and
nice.
It was our first voyage, and it took a little bit of editing to get all, you can imagine.
Yeah.
And we released the first episode, which featured Young Kim of B2 Restaurants, and that premiered a couple weeks ago. And so I think our latest episode was day 2 at the Boston Seafood Show. So we're like 3 episodes in to release to the public, and it's every week.
So, okay, before we get into the show a little bit, what is your title? What is your role? And then Joe, what is your role? And what do you guys do here? And then we'll get into what Samuels and Sons does down the road. But I do want to talk about podcast first. So go ahead. What's your background? What do you do?
I have actually a journalism background from Penn State, but I wanted to combine that somehow. I ended up with seafood. They were hiring here for a marketing position, and I applied for it, and actually didn't get it the first time. Second time I called and I got it, and it was a great combination of my love for seafood, which I've always had, even when I didn't know anything about it, and journalism and marketing. And I've been here for a little over 7 years, and the podcast is the newest kind of addition to our arsenal of marketing, and it's called MONGER. I mean, it's simply called MONGER, and it comes out once a week. It's been great so far.
Yeah, it's awesome. Definitely subscribe. Find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you listen to our show. Listen to MONGER.
Yes.
They pair very nicely together. I think that's interesting that how you didn't. I feel like this is what you hear across the industry is you either grow up in seafood, and your dad did it, and your dad's dad did it, and all that, or you don't plan on it and you just kind of end up in seafood and you stay. I think that's really interesting. It happened to a lot of us. Justin,
Guilty.
Yeah. So Joe, what's your story? What do you do around here? You have
Not
any
much.
important role in this company?
Watches TV.
Yeah. Actually, so my background's in marine bio. I went to Long Island University at Southampton, and that was back with the Flintstones. It was a few years ago.
Are you from the Long Island area?
No, I'm from Philadelphia.
Okay.
I've been with Samuels for 30 years. Prior to that, I was in the Gulf of Mexico buying yellowfin tuna and exporting them to Japan. I was working with a company called Royal Gulf at the time. And that was, I don't know if anybody in here is old enough to remember, that was the Reagan administration. And that was right at the late 80s when sushi was just starting to become popular in the United States, primarily in New York and in California. So we were buying product directly from the boats and then shipping it around the country. And that's where I kind of cut my teeth as far as in the seafood industry. Learning logistics, obviously learning the quality of the fish and doing the buying directly from the boats. So before that, I have my captain's license, and I always had a love for the oceans growing up on the Jersey Shore during the summers and doing a lot of fishing. And that's where the passion came through, and it kind of followed me through my life to where I am now. And been here with Samuels and vice president. I've been working with Sammy, as I mentioned, with 30 years, which is basically the entire time the company's been operating, and it's been a steady growth rate. And things have changed from a very basic product selection for the Philadelphia area, which was basically scallops, crab meat, flounder, swordfish, things you would find locally. And when I came as the director of purchasing, there was only 2 of us, so that was easy to be the director of purchasing. I brought a lot of my I used my contacts to bring a lot of products up from the Gulf of Mexico, where I had worked for 5 years. And it was also about the same time where, Philadelphia now is world-renowned as a restaurant city. Many fine quality restaurants, different cuisines. It just keeps building and building. At the time, it was pretty stagnant here. But it was just at the time where chefs were starting to fly around and moving in from California or coming up out of Louisiana. And it was great because they were that's what was driving me. Because the chefs, when they came here, they wanted the seafood that they were used to working with from the city that they came from. So Sammy was driving me, you got to get this, you got to get this. And then I was, because of my contacts in the Gulf of Mexico, I started bringing things in. First of all, I brought in tuna, obviously, since that's what I had been buying for all that time. And also had been shipping Philadelphia. And Philadelphia and Boston and the Northeast was primarily used to just number 3 cooking grade tuna. So when we started and this is a true story, by the way. So when we started bringing in high-quality tuna, red tuna, 2 pluses and 1s,
like sashimi grade, like
things that you
quality
take
stuff.
for granted now. At the time, we had customers actually ask me, "What's wrong with that tuna?" I said, "What are you talking about? It's beautiful, this fish." They said, "No, it's red."
So let's talk about what's wrong with you.
Yeah. Well, nobody knew, and that's kind of it's kind of a good anecdote for the rest of the industry, because you have to teach people about fish. People don't know enough about food in general, let alone, how many we handle 300 different species of fish. Each fish has its own story, and the story is the value of the product. And in order for these chefs to benefit, to actually do their craft appropriately, they need to learn about the fish. Beef and chicken, and it's all one animal. We have 300 different species, and they're all a little bit different. It's not one size fits all.
Yeah, that literally comes up on almost every episode.
Yeah.
That is one of the biggest challenges that we keep coming across.
So as we introduced fish, we would also spend a lot of time educating the chefs about the fish so that they could use it properly, and more importantly, share that with the customer. Have it get down to the end user, so they would appreciate it, especially since it's wild species. Appreciate the fish, had to be sacrificed. So, and then and things have evolved to the point we are now. Obviously we're I always like to say the best seafood company in North America. I don't like to say largest, but we do have a pretty large footprint right now. So there's a lot of people listening to us, so it's more important than ever to make sure that our message is accurate. Not only about the products that we sell, which we pride ourselves in the education of our customers and letting them know the A to Z where they come from, and Bill and his group do a great job conveying that, but we also spend a lot of time with the NGOs that have popped up probably over the last 12 years, which is extremely complicated. Takes a lot of time. You really got to dive into it to understand it. And more importantly, you have to spend the time to come up with your own definition of sustainability. And then to make it effective, you have to understand it so you can employ it to whatever your business is. And then even more challenging is to convey the value of this effort to your end user. And that's where it becomes effective, and hopefully will save the environment, some of these species that we're talking about today.
Yeah, huge. You look like you got something to...
Well, it's just, there's so much to learn, and Joe has to be the teacher to a staff of, the salespeople are just 60 people, then there's people downstairs, but and
that's just here.
It's just the location in Philly, so it's a tremendous undertaking that Joe has, and he does a great job with it. And then it's marketing. We have to make it public and get the, like you said, Joe, the correct message out there, and it's tough, but I think Samuel's does a very good job at it. With truth, with some pizzazz. We have to make it interesting in the end.
Yeah,
so.
well, that's what it is now. In 2019, people want to be entertained. They don't want to just be taught. So you got to kind of walk that line of how can we engage people enough that they feel entertained and don't really realize that they're learning something.
Well, it's hard for me because I have a great attention span. I don't have I can pay attention for a while, but I have to all right, not everyone, especially nowadays, not everyone has a long attention span, so I have to shorten things, but I'm working on it.
So you said the Philadelphia location. How many locations do you have?
We currently distribute. Philadelphia is the headquarters. We've been here for 30 years, as I mentioned. There used to be a seafood market across the street, and about 10 years ago, we moved into this building, which was brand new, state of the art, and still holding up pretty good, and it's really helped us to accelerate distribution in this area. But from Philadelphia, we distribute in approximately a 300-mile radius, 7 days a week. So we're going as far north, up in the southern Connecticut, southern New York. We go, obviously, from New York all the way down the coast. Philadelphia, Baltimore, Washington, D.C., and then we're into Northern Virginia. We also have a location in Pittsburgh, which is more of a distribution site that we service from here on a daily basis. And then from Pittsburgh, they obviously do Metro Pittsburgh, but then they work west into Ohio. A few years back, we've opened up in Las Vegas, Nevada, and we service a lot of the casinos there with a variety of fish, things that they couldn't access before. And we've, I feel, stepped up the quality of seafood in Nevada. And then our location that we opened up about 2 years ago is located in Orlando, Florida. And we've actually took an old soup making facility and converted it into seafood.
Kind of
and
retrofit
renovated
it.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, and the reason that was a find was in the fish business is a very wet industry, a lot of ice, a lot of water. So not every warehouse has the drainage infrastructure. So this particular building did have that.
Yep.
So
Soup can be wet too.
well, it's just wash downs and it's very clean because even though seafood's a very heavy industry, it's we produce fresh fish in a lot of different varieties. So there's a lot of scales, there's a lot of bones, there's a lot of curry that we call it. The other part of the fish that you don't eat has to be dealt with, and it's through our HACCP plan. And just from our philosophy, we want to be very clean, very safe, very wholesome for our customers because we understand that this product is food and it's moving on to the next step. So it's very important. So Orlando's opened up. We have some challenges there as far as I think the biggest one down there is actually educating a lot of the same challenges that we had here in Philadelphia originally, is educating the Floridians in that market. Again,
The buyers down there.
Yeah, because you got you can imagine there's a lot of chefs coming from all over the country, even the world, to work between Orlando and South Beach. Everybody has a different concept of fish, and you'd be surprised. A lot of these chefs think they know, but maybe they don't know. Or maybe there's room for education. And then in Florida, they've been so, as I mentioned before, in Philadelphia, there was, crab meat, swordfish, flounder, tilefish, things we find here locally. They've been kind of if you think about it, they've been kind of locked in their menu. They got snapper, they got grouper, mahi, conch fritters. But outside of that, you don't see it so much on the menu, especially northern fish. So we're opening up their eyes and helping them understand the products, and hopefully the main thing is to improve the quality of seafood in central and southern Florida. And so far so good. I think we're doing a pretty good job.
It's been really well.
Now, when did that open up, did you say?
About 2 years ago.
A couple years ago?
Yeah.
I'd say you're doing something right with the expansion. And
it's been a slow growth. We only opened up part of the facility. It's a big facility. It's about the half the size of Philadelphia. But we're growing slowly. We have plans. Mid-July, we're installing a new lobster holding system. We find there's a really good demand for North American lobster. You think lobster in Miami, you're thinking the crawfish, the crayfish that are coming out of Bahamas and things like that, and what's locally caught as well. But there's a good demand for North American lobster, so you can imagine the challenges in the logistics of bringing something from Nova Scotia and bringing it into South Florida. So we're installing a lobster holding facility later next month, so that's going to be exciting.
Is that demand, is that just new? That's just one of the recent changes that you're seeing more demand for that? As maybe as New England transplants retire down to Florida,
that's exactly what I was thinking.
They want their taste of home.
Year-round people.
It's interesting as we go to these different areas, the demographics can be drastically different. But down there, if you think about it, it's pretty obvious. During the winter, during the summer, it's all locals, and during the winter, that's when you get the snowbirds come down.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. A lot of people from Canada, a lot of people from up this way, but they all have one thing in common. No matter where you are, everybody likes lobster.
Right.
They're pretty
Amen.
tough, right? So we're going to try and facilitate that. We're excited. The equipment that's available, we have a 15,000 pound capacity tank here in Philadelphia, but that's kind of antiquated compared to the technology that's available now, and you see it in aquaculture as a whole. And because of the advancements of aquaculture in the last 10 years, which we might want to get into later, we're definitely benefiting from that. Just for our own lobster. There's fractionators and different bead filters and things like that we didn't have before, that we're hoping and expect to be very efficient with this new system we're putting in Orlando, and then we're going to revamp our system here in Pennsylvania with some of that same technology. So that's pretty cool.
That's super cool. I do want to talk about the podcast, but before we get to it, can you guys talk a little bit about, we mentioned this before we started recording, but some of our audience may not really have any idea of how a fish gets to their plate, what that supply chain looks like. You guys you consider yourselves a distributor. Mm-hmm. Where does a distributor fit in the supply chain? in regards to how a fish gets to a consumer's plate? What role do you play in that whole process?
How long is this podcast?
We have full capabilities to edit down as much as you want.
Well, it's a good question, and it's extremely labor-intensive, complex system.
Yeah, if we can simplify it for listeners as much as possible, if that's possible.
You asked. Just remember, you asked.
You can ask me, you can't unask.
So let's do it this way. Let's pick a product. What?
All right.
Like you want to do like mahi, you want red snapper.
Let's say a
tuna.
Let's say haddock.
Haddock. Well, haddock's a little bit easier because that's produced domestically.
There you go.
So
let's start there.
Right. So
And a lot of people eat that. so.
Right. So as far as the distributor, we're fortunate enough that the haddock stocks are in pretty strong shape off of the New England coast. So we can access product from New Bedford and Gloucester, some of these traditional old-time fishing villages. The boats will still go out. We don't buy directly from the boats. We buy from a producer on shore, so he'll accumulate product from a number of different boats.
And they'll process that before you buy it, or do you process it?
No, well, generally speaking, a product like haddock would come in gutted and on ice, in a box, and that's what he would do. They would unload the boats, weigh it, make sure that they're doing all the proper reporting to NOAA, and then we would buy directly from the producer itself, which is better for us because if we had to buy directly from the boats, we would have to buy the entire load from the boat. This way we can pick and choose. We've been doing business with a number of people up in that area. If I'm thinking of Rhode Island, Handrigan's is an old name. Archie's been a support of ours for a long time, but they know what our specs are, and they'll pick out the better fish for us. Because we have been doing business for such a long time and a great relationship with these guys. They know what we need to use. So they'll pick it out. So the night before, they'll pack it up, they'll unload it, and then they'll put it on a common carrier, which will bring the fish down to us for use the next morning. So the product really is 24 hours out of the water when we get it. And that's important because
Sure is.
the quicker that we can get the product to our customers, the more shelf life and the better quality that they'll have. So it'll come here, and it'll come in a whole form, and then we'll receive it here, check it. We'll go through our HACCP, Homeland Security, all the fun stuff that we're required to take care of, and then we'll put
Food safety.
right, and then we'll then put it into our cutting room, which is sort of like a company inside a company, and that's where they'll do the cutting and the processing, and they'll fillet it down, package it up, and then it'll come back out for distribution, and then we'll put it on one of the 100 trucks that we send out there, depending on what customer. Out of the 1,500 orders we service a day, and haddock's a great fish that's kind of not as popular as it is in New England, but there's increasing demand for it here.
Yeah, cool.
Do you have processing in all of your facilities?
We have processing capabilities in all of our facilities, but the heavy processing is done here in Philadelphia and in Orlando.
Orlando.
Pretty good.
And the other ones are more distribution centers. Bring it in from here and then ship it out to...
Yeah, being located in Philadelphia, which people don't realize, for logistics between, I-95's right here and 76 goes east and west. We have a major international airport. Truckers come through here readily. There's good logistics. So yes, we supply Pittsburgh and Las Vegas, but they have small cutting facilities, and they can do the custom cuts there for their local customers.
And then on the aquaculture level, we have a lot of partnerships with different aquaculture companies and producers that it truly is a partnership when we work with some of these guys. You have someone like Pure Fish or True North Salmon. They're great guys. They come in here and visit just like we're doing now, and we've been with them for so long, and we have a very good trusting relationship. And they send it from their facility, True North. That's as local as you get with Atlantic salmon. So they send it straight to us, very fresh. It's straight from the farm to us, and Pure Fish does a lot of the same things. They'll bring it in from whatever product they have. They kind of bring it to us from the farm site and straight to us. So we do have a good. Like Joe said, we're in a good position to bring in decent amounts so we can get it straight from the site. It's a little bit of
And you guys
advantage.
are really particular about who you buy from in regards to sustainability and walking the walk, as opposed to some of these people who just claim it, right?
Well, in this day and age, we've always been very particular, especially with my marine bio background. I was always particular of sourcing products from producers and vendors that they were not so much particular, but they had a set of standards when they bought fish. They didn't just buy anything. They tried to stay away from the undersized fish. I would never buy the pup swordfish back then, 30 years ago. I would always buy markers and up because we were always looking for fish that had the opportunity to reproduce. If you saw the collapse of the New England fishery because they just kept catching smaller and smaller and smaller fish, and that's the major indicator of a collapsing fishery is when all you see is small fish. It got to the point where the Canadians were actually producing a natural cut, one cut side of cod fillet, 2-ounce cod fillet. So it's coming out of a half pound fish, and now you see what happened. I always tried to, and it was very difficult 30 years ago to, I was kind of sustainable before it was cool to be sustainable. To pick mature fish, to deal with vendors that understood the same thing I did, that wouldn't just take anything out of the water and sell it for a dime, because we saw what happened. So these are the type of vendors that we deal with, whether it's wild product or aquaculture product. We vet our vendors. We make sure not only on the economic side of things that they have their HACCP plan, all their government documentation in place, that we do our research behind it. We talk to other vendors about it. We talk to other distributors around the country. We share information there. These are the type of people that we want to deal with. And I believe because we've done that over years, that's part of the Samuel's success, because we've always dealt with honorable type of people, and it's paid off, because in seafood it's never one and done. It's about, there's no home runs. It's all singles all the time.
Yeah, and at some point the industry is going to catch up with that, and you guys are going to be right on top. So.
Well, and that's why it's so important that organizations like BAP are transparent themselves, so that they can share their ideas and their philosophy in a way that's easy to understand, so that information could be transferred down to the end user, so they can start understanding it, understand the value of being sustainable and sourcing appropriately, and then creating a demand that they understand, hey, I might have to pay an extra nickel for something, but it's worth it, because we'll have this species will be available forever. I mean, and that's the goal, and the environment from which it comes from.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about MONGER.
Okay.
Where did the idea for the podcast come from? It's
an idea we've had for a little while. Sam D'Angelo, the owner, his son Anthony is a big podcast fan, and he's always wanted to put one on. Before the podcast, we were doing a lot of like market update videos on social media, which I thought was really cool. But he finally he came back from Orlando because he was working down there, and he had all the equipment, and then we started doing some test runs. And it kind of, was his idea, had some of his muscle, but it is something that I had wanted to do for a while. And we passed around, we have a very, collaborative marketing department. We kind of passed around the idea. But, there's hurdles. I mean, we're a fish company, and now we're spending money on mixers and laptops and microphones. So
yeah. We've been going through the same thing.
Yeah, I was a little apprehensive. So,
but once you get the equipment, too, I mean, this social outlet, and I don't want to steal your thunder, is just so unique and needed within the seafood industry. And in the grand scheme of things, it's much more inexpensive to pull off the podcast than it is to put out videos.
You're going to tell everybody. We have a good thing going here.
Sean, cut that out. Don't put that on.
No, you're right. It's such it's an investment's kind of a weird word, I guess, but it is. I mean, because it's a great way to, I would say, there's chefs on the line, cutting or prepping or whatever. They're not going to be watching a video there, but they could be listening to it. That's what I think,
Yep.
So that's when it started very recently, and that's kind of how it came up, just a collaborative effort between one of the creative D'Angelos and the marketing department.
Awesome. So what is your main mission? Our mission for our show that we say a lot is we really just want people to feel more comfortable buying and eating seafood, whether that's chefs, whether that's buyers for larger companies, or just consumers at the grocery store or at restaurants. We want them to feel more comfortable buying and eating more seafood and understanding how to get responsibly sourced seafood. So whether it's wild caught or we are a aquaculture advocacy group, but we want people to by wild caught as well. We just make sure it's responsible. That is our mission. What's your main mission with your podcast?
To educate and entertain the ins and outs of the industry, really, whether that be, we want the right information getting out, because there are a lot of misunderstandings about fish, or sometimes just complete no knowledge about it. But there's a range of things, because we deal with so many things. Responsible fishing, aquaculture is a big one, just to really understand it. And then also just to hear from chefs, different applications they use. It's not always completely about fish, and it is sometimes about the chef life. I also, we've had some of our colleagues here at Samuel's talking about what it's like here, a day in the life of a monger, just to kind of understand what, the full capacity of the industry, and of course get, a good message out there about the good things going on within, whether it be aquaculture, responsible fishing, and NGOs such as yourselves.
Yeah, we tend to be in a vacuum here.
Yeah, we talk about that a lot on our show. Is everyone in the seafood industry pats each other's backs, but the good things that are happening within the industry don't seem to get outside of the seafood industry vacuum, so to speak. So
it's starting to, which is nice. So the first chef we had on, Young Kim, he spends a lot of time educating himself, picking out his own fish.
Now, where is he out of?
He has a restaurant called B2. He has a couple of locations in East Norton, here in at the outskirts of Philly, Ballackinwood, and the other one is in Eagleview, outside of Philly. So he doesn't just buy the fish and serve it. He puts a lot of thought into the story and a lot of the aquaculture facts. So there are people out there that are very refreshing to speak with when they actually do get it. Some DC chefs we have are we had one on here, District Fishwife, is a shop in DC. Fiona, she was on the podcast in Boston, and she puts a lot of thought into more than just bringing the fish in and then selling it. So there's more than just a handful of chefs that bring a little bit of hope to it.
Yep.
Awesome. I love it. So where do you see what's on the horizon for the podcast? I mean, where are you going to be doing some traveling? Are you going to have some guests in that you can talk about, or is that kind of on the hush-hush?
We are going to take over North America first, and then we think we're going to... No, right now, this is one that I really want to... we worked very hard to put this together, having you guys come down, and after this, we actually had the guy that... anyone that comes to our facility, I think, is interesting. First put there, we do tours here. Joe gives so many people tours, whether it be chefs. We do have sustainability groups come through. So anyone that comes through here, is always a possibility to have on. Yeah. We also have suppliers that, whether they supply us, tuna, or they supply, farm salmon. They have a very interesting story. So, guys like Verlasso Salmon, we'd like to have on here, and I'm sure we will, because Bill likes to talk. So anything like that, suppliers, customers, chefs. Right now, we don't have too much planned. We still have some things recorded from Boston that you can listen to. We can listen to previous episodes and the ones coming out. But anyone's a target.
And you said you're releasing one episode a week. Is that the
yes?
plan?
It's once a week on Wednesdays. We've been releasing them.
Yep.
We go to your podcast app, Podbean, also, if you don't have an iPhone.
Yep.
Awesome. I love it. So it's been good. You've been seeing good response and getting.
It is, yeah. I mean, we promote it throughout the office, and it's important to make sure the people you have on, that blessed you with the time they gave you. You kind of get them involved too. So it's been very interesting conversations. It's been really neat.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate you guys coming on our show as well. And I think the great thing about podcasting, and we talked about this when we first started, is it's such a young media that there is no competition right now. I mean, there's not a lot of regulations around it. It's kind of the Wild West, right? So there's not a lot of competition between, oh, don't listen to their show, listen to my show. Everyone's like, oh, listen to their show and listen to our show and then listen to this third show, because you get so much out of all of them, It's great. I mean, I'm subscribed to like 30 different podcasts. So I'm really glad that we were able to get together and kind of, pull each other up and help each other get the word out about each other's shows, because it's really, really helpful. In
the end, you realize this, I mean, I'm sure Joe can second, it's sort of like a small industry. You get to know everybody. It becomes a small world eventually, and you help each other out. It's pretty
Absolutely.
Neat. From going to Boston, the expo, you start recognizing people, and you start talking the old war stories, and podcast is definitely a natural medium for this.
Yeah, and we spoke with the girls from Seafood News podcast.
Yep.
Oh, Amanda and Lauren?
Yeah, I think we're going to get together with them and do a show as well. And I think at Boston next year, it would be really cool to do like a seafood podcast roundtable. We'll all get together and have one big show. I think that
We
would
have
be
a few
really
new
neat.
plans for our podcast in Boston.
Oh,
I can't say anything there.
All right.
But
Well,
no,
we'll look forward to hearing about that.
Yeah, no, you'll be involved. But you'll have fun with Seafood News. I was on their podcast
Oh,
once.
yeah.
It was like a year ago, actually. Probably this month. It was a year ago I was on. It's really neat.
Nice. Yeah, we haven't. We got to reach out to them, and we talked to them at Boston, but we haven't gotten out to them yet. But
Yeah, they're friendly. They'll give you a tour of the place. It's really neat.
Cool. So, anything else you guys want to talk about that you want to get out there?
He rolled up his sleeves.
Wheels are turning.
Yeah, it was
Well,
rolling
I
his
just
sleeves
think
'cause we had to
it's
turn
great
the
to
air
hear about your
conditioner
guys' podcast. There's a Mutual Admiration Society here. That's nice. Because old people don't listen. No, I'm just kidding. I've never listened to a podcast. I haven't even listened to ours
Perfect
yet.
time to start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you'll have
It's easy.
you'll have to educate me. But I think it's a great media. I think if it's important what you guys are doing, because if you can get people's attention, you can correct a lot of the, as Wilby said, the misinformation that's out there. Again, you guys are just sort of getting your feet wet in this industry a little bit. But I wanted to say about 30 years ago, I mean, when aquaculture first started, there were some mistakes made, just like with any new industry.
Absolutely.
And those mistakes and those miscalculations, or the learning curve back then, they're still not viable today, but they still circulate. You
resonate,
still see it on the internet, and people's attention span is about 15 seconds, and they just see the headline and the sensationalized statement, but don't take the time to go through it, and they carry that
Whether
with
it's
them.
true or not, too.
Right. So if you can get people to listen and combat that, I mean, if I go to one more Christmas party and I get into the conversation with the person next to me, and they say, well, what type of industry? And I'm in the seafood business. I've been doing it a while. And they'll say, oh, I never eat farm-raised fish. I said, oh, all right, well, you can eat whatever you want. This is America. We're not forcing you to do anything. But I often ask that same person, I said, well, where do you get your chicken? Where do you get your beef? Is there wild pigs running around? I mean,
wild
caught chicken. How about corn? You get wild corn? I say everything else you eat comes from some sort of farm. But yet seafood, you won't eat it, and you won't even spend any time learning about it because of this idea that you have in your head that you picked up
from God knows
right
where.
from you don't even. I say, could you elaborate on it? Of course they can't, because it's unfounded. It's and then I can even reverse it. I said, well, would you eat giraffe if somebody served it to you? Or
That's interesting.
or would you eat cheetah? Of course not, they say, right? I said, well, they're all wild.
They're fuzzies.
They're
You
all
gotta-
wild.
No one wants to touch the fuzzies.
Right, whatever it is. So, I mean, it's so hypocritical, and people, and I think it's changing now, and I think, my point is, I think it's important what you guys is doing is great to change the tide, because if, no pun intended.
Pun absolutely intended.
But if we have 9 billion people on the planet right now. We can no longer depend on the oceans for our seafood. I mean, you just can't do it. There'll be nothing left. We're very good. 200 years ago, you could catch a few, there'd be plenty left. Now we can pick a beer can off at about, 30 fathoms. We can pick a beer can off the bottom. There has to be alternative sources if we're going to continue to eat high quality seafood, and we're seeing it. The salmon farms are very efficient now. When they run efficiently, they make more money, so it makes common sense. But they also want to. I mean, if you talk about their carbon footprint and emissions compared to raising cattle, it's a fraction of what's going on. It's very minimally impactful to the surrounding environment, and again, has a low carbon footprint. What oyster farms have done over the last 10 years is amazing. They've made it fun again. There's plenty of oysters. It's a high-quality protein. Everybody's starting to eat oysters again. Restaurants see the value in them. They serve them buck of shuck nights during the week, exposing, the quality of their products, hoping, and it gives them a hope that people come back for the weekend and then drop the big buck.
Yeah.
And now we're seeing the variety, where it just used to be catfish, rainbow trout, and salmon. That would be your main aquaculture products, but now we got cobia that we're very successful for us. Pompano, Texas redfish,
steelhead, barramundi.
There's a plethora, a variety of fish, And the big one is the Bronzinos, right? People love Bronzinos, but they won't eat salmon, right?
European sea bass.
Right, which is delicious, but they don't realize it's all aquaculture. And that's why it's so available, so high quality. It's consistently priced. You don't have to worry about seasonal switches. If you're, say you had an event, say you had a wedding 8 months away, you could put Bronzino on the menu because you know it's going to be available and your guests are going to enjoy it.
Yeah.
So people really need to, I'm not here to tell them just to listen to me, but they need to
But they are,
invest
so
some time.
say what they need to hear.
Well, I want them just to do some research themselves. And then once they understand the product, they can also then start understanding organizations like BAP because it's very complex. You need to keep continually educating yourself. It's never over. It's not one and done. I mean, you have to educate yourself on a daily basis to keep up. And then you have to understand the plethora of the seafood watches of the world and the fish choice and the ocean choice and the BAPs. I mean, it's very complicated, but it's very worthwhile and it's very important. And because of the internet and the information's out there and readily available, but you got to take a little bit of time to educate yourself.
Well, and you've mentioned too, when we're talking about aquaculture in general, when it became a thing, that was not that long ago. And
well, actually, the Chinese did.
But they've been doing it for
2,000 years ago.
But to the point of, but they're
right
now that it's commercially, and so much has changed. So we talk about aquaculture coming to light in the age of social media. So farming has been farming, and people know what it was because it's been around for so long. Mm-hmm. But now we have this social media platform and everyone's connected via smartphones and tablets and computers and are reading all these headlines, but things are drastically improving and changing. So and just to your point of do a little bit of research, don't base everything off of that initial impression. And that's what we're trying to accomplish through our podcast, is getting the accurate information out there.
Right. And in a funny way, in an odd way, and in a good way, because aquaculture took so much heat over the years, they are more cognizant of what's going on than anybody. They are now, when you go to a farm or you go to a site, they're very transparent. They're doing everything right from, and BAP with their 4-star system is very important, the way they break it down. And that's something else people should understand, that they're tracking the feed, the environment, the packaging and the harvest method, top to bottom. And also people don't understand that it also involves how it impacts the surrounding community. If we're talking about products from overseas, is there child labor? Is there slavery? And you go into the whole IUU stuff.
Yeah, the social aspect people just don't think of.
It's so complex. And you talk about how many levels there are. That's why I was asking about if you want to talk about tuna, because that gets crazy. Yeah. And then you talk about the importation laws, and now we have the SIMP rules and the KDEs that we're required to provide before that product can even move into the country. I mean, it's so vastly complex, and some people think almost too much, and that's a whole nother podcast. But they're in place, so the main thing is that there's a lot of tools out there, there's a lot of information out there, and there's a lot of people watching out there. And starting with NOAA, I mean, that's one thing I'm going to put a little bit of a plug in. I don't think that our own National Marine Fisheries Service gets enough credit for what they do. They work with a shoestring budget, and they've preserved 200 different fisheries around, and improved them around the nation. So there's a lot that goes into seafood. There's a lot to be appreciated, but people should know what they're eating, and they should know where their products come from. And it's available out there readily if you want to ask. And people should be confident, whether it's farm-raised or wild, that people are doing the right thing, that the systems are in place to protect these species. But if you have a question, ask. And if you're dealing with a reputable vendor, they will tell you. Everybody's very transparent.
And if they refuse to tell you, buy it from someone else.
Find somebody else, exactly.
Yep. Awesome. Thank you guys so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. Bill, we're going to sit down and continue to talk in a little bit, but I really appreciate you guys coming on our show and being so gracious to us as we come here and turning the air conditioner off and sitting in the blistering heat on a 90-degree day.
Yeah, it's not too bad.
So really appreciate it. And if people want to learn more about you or
have questions,
Samuels and Sons, or want to contact you with questions, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, for our podcast, I'm going to start having listeners email me, which is willbe@samuelsseafood.com. But we have a great website, too. It has a lot of information. It talks about the history of the company. I mean, which, we've been in distribution for about 30 years, but we go back to the late 1800s, fishing over in Sicily, and then coming over here and opening a retail store in 1929. Been a family business ever since, and still is.
That's funny. Well, you don't look that old.
I know. It's a lot of moisturizer.
Yeah, what's your secret?
The secret is eating seafood.
Seafood,
Yes, eat fish.
High omega-3s.
But they can learn about the history totally on our website. Social media is great. They can contact us on Instagram. We'll get back to them right away, or my email. Like I said, willbe@samuelsseafood.com, and I'm happy to help anybody out. Joe, if it's a really good question, I'll just walk to his office anyway and pretend like I know the information.
Awesome. So we'll put all that information in the show notes as well. So thank you guys so much. Really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you guys for having us.
Yeah. Folks, that was our episode with the folks from Samuels & Son Seafood. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I had a great time. Like I said, real long day, but
Worth it.
Yeah, worth it. We packed it in, had a great time, and it was really cool getting to see that. Maddie, I'm really sorry you weren't there for the conversation. But
Me too, but the conversation turned out really great, so I'm glad that you guys got to go down and
hopefully
chat
next
with
time we
them.
get to travel, we can all go.
Yeah.
Or maybe you guys can go without me, and I can just stay home and chill.
Okay,
But-
I'll have a lobster burger without you.
That was a really good. It was a good burger. All right. Remember, if you want to get in contact with us, you can email us at podcast@aquaculturealliance.org with any questions, comments, criticisms, guest requests, or topic requests, anything like that. That's the best way to contact us. You can also find us on Twitter. We are at Aquademia Pod, all one word. Or you can leave us a voicemail at 1-603-384-3560.
And if you'd like to support the podcast and then in doing so also gain access to a bunch of awesome features, then you should become a member of the Global Aquaculture Alliance, which you can do on our website at aquaculturealliance.org/membership.
And always leave us a 5-star rating and a nice review. And if you want to be on our show, as Sean mentioned, call our phone number, send us a tweet on Twitter. We would love to hear from our listeners to get some feedback and hear what your thoughts are on the show.
And make sure that you check out the MONGER podcast from Samuels & Son.
Yep. Subscribe, rate, and review their show as well. They're good friends of ours. They're kind of like a sister podcast to us. So we appreciate you guys supporting them and supporting us. So thank you so much, and we'll talk to you next week.
See ya.
Bye.